We're going to do the Lent one. So in this episode, we have Naomi, of course, Sadie, and then Sadie's sister, Carrie Carpenter. The show notes say, oh, and there's show transcripts that we always forget about. This week's episode is a little bit different and special episode for many reasons. One being we're interviewing Sadie's older sister, Reverend Carrie Carpenter. With today being the first day of Lent, Ash Wednesday, we wanted to talk to Carrie about diet. You can stay up to date on all the things, satisfaction factors by blah, 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 blah. Okay. So it's only 44 minutes. Usually they're like a lot longer, by like 10 or 20 minutes. So that's good. So 44 minutes. Do we have any preferences? Do you want to be Naomi or Sadie?
I'm comfortable with anybody.
Same. I'm comfortable with anybody. I find Naomi to be challenging, but also familiar. I find Sadie to be challenging.
I found Sadie easier to interpret for myself than Naomi. Remember we switched?
Yeah, I thought you liked the switch. I thought you liked doing Naomi.
No, wait, whoever I had the second time around was easier, and I can't remember.
Naomi.
Oh, then it was easier for me to do Naomi then.
I am a little
nervous
to do the guess because I don't know anything about United Methodistism.
I mean, that says it all right there, baby. I mean, I probably have the most church background out of anybody here. Let's put it that way.
You want to be the churchy one then?
The churchy one. Yeah, I mean, I could if you want me to, but I'm also fine with not.
I wonder if it's going to be like churchy because I don't know religious signs.
Oh, I mean, I do mostly. I'm not a Methodist, but.
Yes, Taylor.
Wait, is he on FaceTime with you? He was just here. What phone is he using?
His brother's, because what are you doing?
I love it.
Okay, we can stay on like this. Just gotta be quiet, okay? I'm muting you. You can stay on the. That's what we do.
So cute, actually. I wish we could do that for VRS.
I sometimes log into the security cameras and they know I'm there.
Yeah.
That's enough for them. Okay, so you want to be church lady or you want to stay as Naomi?
Church lady? Isn't that the name of some movie?
Yeah, Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live, the church lady.
Would you like to be Reverend Carrie Carpenter or do you want to stay as Naomi? Either decision would make sense to me.
Either of them are fine with me.
I'll be Naomi. And
I'll be Carrie Carpenter. So what we do is we change our names so that it reflects who we're interpreting for. So do we put the person's name first or our name first? I can't remember.
Theirs first, right? Okay. United Methodist, is that a
Methodist? I don't know why. I don't know. I would spell Methodist and then Methodist, but I don't know why that's assigned. It just is.
United Methodist Deacon.
You can also say UMC, United Methodist Church.
Ooh. I got to set that up so that we can have that going forward, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the most prep we've ever done. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is.
And do you guys already have like a set for satisfaction factor, intuitive eating? Didn't you say intuitive eating?
Intuitive eating. We go the satisfaction factor, and then we go podcast. At the end, she talks about their Instagram, which is Satisfaction Factor Pod. Just a heads up, not podcast. Don't we have? Where's the transcript?
And let's. Good idea.
If there's any words that like any signs. If you need anything.
I always put the caption on. You guys should see that now too.
Yeah, I hate that. So that's not my jam.
I like to put it right under the camera.
I'm just gonna put this here. How about this? Instead of me doing this, how about I put this right here, and everyone can look through and see if there's something that stands out to them that they want to look up a sign for or something like that.
Wow, we should do this prep all the time.
I know, right?
First day of Lent was L, back of your face, like fasting, but with an L.
Correct, yes.
And then Ash Wednesday was sign of the cross.
And then Wednesday.
I feel like This is too much prep.
Yeah, this is the most prep I've ever done. Ooh, I don't know the sign for Epiphany. That's
What
when.
is- Do we need to bring it up?
And Epiphany.
No, that means Epiphany is when the angel appeared to Mary to tell her she was
Oh.
going to have Jesus.
Clearly.
Oh,
Clearly not.
You know
a
what? I have a
religion.
like really, really, really old religious dictionary over here.
Oh.
I wonder if it's in there.
I always call
Look
Becca.
how old this sucker is. Oh, this is like, yeah. Okay. Nope, no Epiphany. Darn it, a manual of religious signs. A lot of help you are.
all right, I'm just like scrolling. I'm not reading words. They're not like coming into my eyeballs.
Interesting.
I will say that usually whatever we're teaching kind of like is my focal point. So this week in my ASL production, I'm going to be hyper focused on like ASL grammatical structures. I'm going to want to overutilize topic comment. I'm going
You
to
will.
make sure I establish my nouns first, and figure ground. So that's some of the things that have been on my mind the past few weeks. And so those are some things I'm going to look for in my own work. When it comes to prepping for this, I just looked at the transcript, but I couldn't absorb any of the words. So I'm not even going to
Interesting.
do that to myself. I'm just going to move ahead. It's just making it worse. So
That's interesting.
I feel like also other prep has been doing this other times. I'm Sadie, so that's going to be easier for me because I've been Sadie in the past. Although this episode did mention that it was interviewing Sadie's sister, so I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a different Sadie and more Sadie than a Sadie than we've ever had before. Also, I'm nervous with all the religious stuff. We chose this one particularly because I was interested in the context. We wanted to listen to it, so we chose it, but I'm nervous because I don't know religious signs. I remember one day at a VRS company I worked for when I was like, I don't know any religious signs. I only know amen. And 3 people were like, that's not even the sign for amen. And amen. They were like, that's prayer. I was like, it's not, it's amen. No, it's not. All right. So apparently I don't even know that word. So that's what I know about religious. So I'm up for this fun challenge. That's where I am. And that's my prep. What say you, Megan?
I am excited about doing this. I'm a little nervous because I'm like, am I even going to be able to distinguish people? Am I just going to be like hands flapping? Oh, it's not me, it's you. That's what I'm nervous about. But also focusing on topic comment because it's just not something that I'm intentional in doing. So if it happens, it's a miracle. But also I've been called out lately for my directional verbs, and my directional verbs are going every which way, but apparently the way I want them to, like invite it. So then I just do this weird like, I'm inviting you, you're inviting me, you choose. Yeah. So just being mindful of which way are my verbs going.
Don't worry,
that's meant for them to go.
That's what Lori and I are teaching next week.
Next
So
week.
we're not going to judge you this week for that. We would only have judged you next week after we taught that. No worries.
I will literally stand in a staff meeting and be like, send me a calendar invite. Just email me. Yeah. So we'll see how this goes.
Excited.
I understand about the differentiating between different voices, for sure, because that was a struggle for me, at least at first. But Sadie's got the twang. That's what helps me remember. I'm just nervous now that Carrie and Sadie are going to have the same twang, and I'm not going to be able to tell who's who. I don't say twang is a bad thing, by the way. It's just
sister voices might be difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna thank you for that because I'm gonna keep the transcript open and see how that serves me.
Interesting. I think that will distract me, so I'm not going to do that.
I know it's gonna be a little bit hard. Maybe I won't. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm going to sneeze. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to take notes, or am I going to take notes? Did we find that to be too distracting? Not distracting? Where did we land on that?
Well, Megan, normally what happens is Lori and I will take notes in the times that we're off, in the brief times that we're off. But my experience is that even though I know that Lori's not writing notes about me, every time I see her go like this, my heart rate elevates and I'm like, she's writing about what a terrible interpreter I am. And then it distracts me and then I can't interpret and then I am a terrible interpreter. So I become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I vote no notes.
No, no.
Plus I also can't be present when I'm taking notes because I'm taking notes and writing like half sentences that I don't understand later while trying to be like, when is it going to be my turn? Ah! And so I just don't feel like I'm the best interpreter I can be while taking notes.
I have paper and pen in front of me just in case I'm like, that was really something I want to talk about later and I'll never remember it.
Of course I do too, but I'm not going to write anything. It's fine.
Okay, great.
Are you sharing this? Are you doing the sound or am I?
What would make you feel better?
You.
Okay, then me.
I'm scared to be responsible.
So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play it and then I'll pause it so you can finish that intro because it's a lot. And then I'll play it again. I'll finish the intro and then I'll keep going from there. And then if we want to pause later, we'll pause. Running over each other isn't usually a problem. We actually kind of like it. And we find ourselves getting regulated by like the go. And then when we're like, oh, that's how I should have been interpreting the whole time. So don't worry about wrapping up when you're supposed to. Take your time, get out what you need out. Is there anything you need from me as a team doing this with you?
I don't know. I don't know how to team virtually. It's still a thing that's difficult for me. I don't even team well face to face. So I've spent too much time alone.
That's totally fine. And we don't normally, this isn't like a traditional teaming situation. So what happens?
We find it very, tell me if I'm wrong, Chelsea, helpful when the other person's back channeling, both as an interpreter and as the person that they're supposed to be. Just so that it's there and that if you are, make sure it's like I hear a yeah and then you do yeah. If you just tune out and you hear your person, just don't, just let it go. You know what I mean? Especially if it's a back channel, because if it doesn't fit in, then sometimes it gets very confusing. So make sure the back channeling fits in to where the back channeling is supposed to be, unless it's an interpreting back channeling and you're like, yeah.
That's not confusing at all. That's fine.
It's not, it is, I mean.
No, I'm kidding. It just sounded more complex. It sounds more complicated in words than it is in real life.
Okay. Does that make sense, Megan, though?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm like, that makes total sense. Okay. What do I need from you guys? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I feel like I didn't like when we were taking notes last time. It was regulating me and making me feel like I was doing bad. That's it. Anything else you want to add? Chelsea, did you say you were working on something?
Well, since we've been teaching about it, I've been well, it's a little hard. When I've been doing VRS work, I've been noticing topic comment like is really noticeable in my work more. Not that I'm necessarily like intentionally focusing on it, but it just seems to be happening more, which I'm really excited about. So.
Okay, ready? Megan's like, I was ready an hour and a half ago. I was ready at 6:15. Okay. Sorry. Here we go. So now we go to our debrief, and I feel awkward because I feel like I have so much to say, but I really did nothing but watch you work for the past 44 minutes. I'm sorry. What a bad one to come in on, Megan.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't get more chance to actually do anything.
I was really pleased with my choice not to take Carrie because I've been like, what?
Yes, not only for content wise, but like, I know I wasn't going to take notes, but I took some notes because she said borders and I heard boring and I had to check the caption. And she said like muddy churches in England and I heard money churches. So like all the way through, I was just like hearing her completely wrong. And I was like, forget about what she's talking about. I don't even get the form. So I'm so glad that it wasn't.
And was it just me, or did some sentences like?
I had
Well,
no idea. Like, they were so muddied. Was there something wrong with the audio? I couldn't understand. Like, there were like at least 3 times where I was like, I don't know. Like, I have literally nothing. And I just like kind of made it up. I was like, I think this is what they might have said if I could have heard them.
I feel like, yeah, there were some things that were edited, and to like the
That was-
non-interpreter ear, it sounds right, but then when you're putting it and you're setting yourself up and then it didn't come.
I had
it
no
was-
idea what they were saying a couple times, honestly.
Yeah. How do you feel, Chelsea? You did all of that lifting. My apologies.
No, it's okay. If there was one for me to do, this was the one. For sure. There were times I was really happy because a lot of times, like when she was like referencing scripture, I have like a lot of it memorized. So like I was really happy that I was like, oh, Romans 3:38. I know that. So that was helpful to have that schema. But yeah, I feel actually for the first time with us interpreting this podcast, I feel pretty good.
Wow.
I know it wasn't there are definitely things that like in the moment choices I made, and when I made them I was like, oh, I wish I had done that differently, but I can't remember any of them now.
Were you triggered at all? But I feel like it was very anti-evangelical.
Evangelical.
Sorry.
I was like, what is the sign for evangelical? I don't know what the sign for evangelical is.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
I'm gonna go look that up. No, I wasn't triggered by it. I was triggered by when she was talking about like some of the disgusting stuff that's happening in the church,
Right.
because I have the same visceral reaction. I'm like, oh, gross. That is like not God is like not cool with that. So I think that I couldn't like my face, I couldn't fix it when someone else was, I feel like Megan, you might have been interpreting at that point, or someone who wasn't me was interpreting. And I was like, I felt myself going like, oh gosh, that's what somebody said. And then I was like, oh, fix your face. But no, I wasn't particular. Well, I don't necessarily identify with any of those groups, so I wasn't triggered. I was as offended as she was. Excuse me, my kid's knocking on the door.
What about you, Megan? Anything in there like triggering or upsetting or whatever for you?
Not triggering or upsetting, but then I was like, do I know sign language? I don't know how to sign anything. And then I was like, my committee was just like, what are you doing? Go away. Like, I don't know. It was, yeah, I don't know. I was struggling with my own lack of vocabulary knowledge today. Yeah.
That's interesting because I was watching you and I was like, I just want to be Megan. I just want to interpret like Megan interprets.
I could not for the life of me figure out body image, which doesn't even make sense to like why I can't figure it out, because I know what it means, but I can't interpret it. And I never did figure out a way to do it. And then I signed shame, and both of you signed shame. And then I was like, I'm shamed at my shame sign. I don't know. Is this like, and then it just like I just spiraled into like, what is happening? And then I was like, if I sign this one more time, I'm just going to slap myself in the face with it. Cause like, I felt like that was the only thing I was signing. I was like, restricted, limited, everything.
I have a couple comments about that. So the first comment is that Lori and I have been interpreting this for like months now, and I still don't know how to sign body image.
Okay.
Still have no idea. The other thing is I sign shame this way because I am so terrified of signing whore that I just sign shame like this, because I'm like, it's gonna come off my hand and I'm gonna not mean for it to happen and it's gonna be shameful. So I'm just sign shame like this because I just know I'm gonna sign whore one day.
I've done that. When I was a senior in high school, I was part of an off-Broadway play, and I was a deaf person in this production. And I made my mom and she brought her friend come and see the show. I always danced and did things. My mom never came, and I was like, you have no excuse. It wasn't interpreted, but I was like, this is like a big ordeal. the writer of the show is there. We're getting like moving on to Broadway. Like it was a big deal at the time. Like, you need to come and see me. So my mom comes and the line is Grandma Shy. And I, of course, signed that grandma's a whore. And I just locked eyes with my mom, and I can't fix it. I can't do anything about it. And we just kind of like, okay. And so that has stayed with me for a very long time. And I know, 40 years later, you shouldn't take death rolls. It was in the long time ago. And I was in high school. So I'm not going to talk about that. I've had that trauma, but also I know this to just be like slow and shy. And this is yeah, more like embarrassed. So that's what I was thinking. But also you were like food deprivation, and I was like, right. I never think.
Yeah, that was a moment too where I was like, yes.
I don't even remember doing that.
If shame and prostitute were like completely different signs, I probably would have signed shame like this.
But then I was like, well, they're both doing it. I'm outvoted here. I've been
We just
kicked
have
off the
separate
island.
traumas.
And if we saw it, maybe we would start doing yours. Yeah, I always forget that's an option because I got it out.
Understandably.
I mean, my mom went through the script with me because she was my language model at that age and that time. And so she knew that's not what I was supposed to do. So it was extra funny. I feel like there maybe not have been enough content for either Megan and I to sort of, these were our needs. I know at one point, twice it came up like how diet culture is impacting in church. And I was aware, like, here's a noun, here's a noun, here's the comment. And so I was proud of myself for setting that up that way. I don't know if, I think for all of us, the affect took a while to kind of come into play. I know for myself, halfway I checked out. I can explain why, but I just was like sort of checked out. So when I was like back again, I don't know if there was any affect there. That's something I'd have to rewatch for. But I really, with Megan, I mean, we don't usually try to give feedback, but I am for some reason with Megan. I really think your articulation is so beautiful. It's like so clean and intentional and sharp, and your like prosody and use of space. It's really great to see, and it's influential. And same thing, Chelsea. When Carrie was talking, I was feeling like I was going in the undertow. It was so fast. And it was so much, and I couldn't understand some of the accent, like I was hearing words wrong, and I didn't understand the content, and it was coming so fast that I was starting to panic. And to watch you just kind of like cool and calm, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. When it did come back to me, I was like, that's right, I got this too. And I was able to like listen and pause and listen and pause. And I know at one point I bled into Megan, and I was like, I'm not going to get regulated by this. I'm going to stay my course, and we'll give the time that's needed. And so it's very helpful to see you like in control, because it allowed me to also be in control.
That's really encouraging to hear. Thank you. I can say the only reason I was that in control was because of my familiarity with the topic. If it had been something else coming at me that fast, I don't think I would have had such a great control and probably been more regulated by the speed. I do have to say that my fear came true, and it was hard for me to figure out when Carrie was talking and when Sadie was talking. So I don't know if there were times when you saw I was like, is that you or is that me? Like, I wasn't sure. I think Carrie has a little bit stronger of an accent than Sadie, but there were a couple times, I'm sorry if I like gave you the deer in the headlights, or if it was like supposed to be me, or I was just like, I don't know who that is.
I had the transcript up just to like be like, who is this? And then I realized you can't rely on the transcript because it wasn't all there. I mean, the words were there, but it didn't have like all the character break. There was one time I think Naomi was talking. I don't know, it sounded like her. So I was like, I'm just gonna do something here. But it wasn't listed like that in the transcript. But I was stressed out on your behalf because I was like, that is so many words, and I don't I get like I felt like it was just like a tidal wave of words, and I was like, I can't even understand any of this anymore, because it was like so country, so much, so religious, so, and then like books, and I was like, I'm done. I'm checked out. I'm
Ooh.
checked out on your behalf.
That was actually a real challenge when she started like listing the diet, like the Daniel diets. Like I could not get through her accent. Like I don't know what I found like 3 that I could understand. I could not get through her accent at that point for some reason. I don't know why.
If it makes you feel better, I'm country. I'm from Atlanta. Like, this is like, these are my people. And I'm like, girl, what you saying? I don't understand you. It was a little much.
It was much. With the content, yeah, I was really relieved that I wasn't Carrie, because you had given us a rundown on Lent, but then this was like a lot of information.
Yeah, she went there.
Yeah, I mean, like we really went there. I don't know if anybody has anything about like production that they want to talk about or whatever. I do remember at some point the few little instances I had. There were some moments where I was like aware of like setting up my nouns and then setting up my comments, which I was excited about. But at many points I realized that I was ditching them and I was doing more of like the Betty Colonimus, like what's the main point? What's the main point? What's the main point here? And at some point in this, I had this like just epiphany about like, not to use that word, sorry. I just had this moment where I realized that how much that serves you. And I hate that we're always like the church of Colonimus, no pun intended again. But it was really helpful for me to like, because I came into this product base, right? Even though it was like, I'm going to set up my nouns, it's still very product based. It's still stuck on the language. And then as it's happening and as things are going, it's so difficult to pull out, here's the nouns, and I'm going to use my space appropriately. People don't speak the right way for us to interpret it. So I couldn't do that all the time. But what I could always do, and that I was always mindful of, is that little like committee member on my head is like, what's the main point? Okay, comment on it. What's the main point? Okay, comment on it. And I feel like there were times that I was pleased. In the beginning part, when she was introducing her sister and saying what her sister did, I know that I missed out a whole bunch. Like it was omitted. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand, like, by the time I looked for the text and then I was like, oh, I have the transcript, but where am I looking now? And now it's gone and I didn't hear it. So I know I omitted a bunch, but later on, I feel like I was more successful because I had taken that language pressure off and I just was thinking about, okay, main point here. Okay, let's get the main point here. And doing that, I feel like my production was more visual. I was using a lot more space. I was using a lot more visuals and stuff. So I feel like I got the end result anyway, even though my approach was different.
That makes total sense, because in thinking about like what's the noun, that's very lexical based.
Right.
You're not getting like the 33,000 foot view. So that makes sense. I feel like there were times when I started a sentence and then halfway through I was like, oh, I don't think I have a noun yet. And then I was like, oh no, I need to do topic comment. What's the topic? And then I kind of tried to like restructure the sentence within the sentence, and I'll have to go back and watch that. I don't know what that wound up looking like, but I think that a lot of the times I was more aware of like a topic comment structure after it had happened, and I was like, oh wow, I did that. But the times that I had to like, I was trying to make it happen, kind of interrupted my comprehension of the source text. It like distracted me for a second and interrupted my C. So I'm curious to go back and look at that and see if that any of it made sense.
I think it did. I was watching it for the most part.
I got really confused with the content, when she was going on about the church and the seasons, and I was like, what? Watching you didn't help. I was like, this makes no sense in any language. I need a picture. Okay, let's break it down. Picture support here for me. I need.
I have
an
to admit
accommodation.
that was not my shining moment either, because like my flavor of Christianity, my faith, like we're not that liturgical and traditional. So I mean, I know Advent, like you have an Advent calendar, that means Christmas, right? And
Sure.
then I
I
was
remember that.
like, what'd you
Yeah, now that makes sense.
say? Right. So I
Me
know,
and
I'm like,
Advent
okay,
calendars, just the thing you move to
yeah,
next
that.
Christmas, and then
Yeah, so I know Advent means Christmas. So that was easy for me. And then next I don't know what any of the other stuff is. Like I know Lent, but I'd never heard of like the ordinary season or the Epiphany, I think was next.
Right.
I didn't know I didn't know any of that. So that was interesting for me too. I was like, I'm learning.
I mean, but then it's kind of like, oh, I'm learning so much. And I literally, like, in my notes here, you see it says Advent to a bunny, and then I wrote pagan. I mean, like, come on. Okay. And then I get trapped in my own, like, and then I start closing off, and that's what I'm saying. I cut out at some point. There was like a sermon happening, and I just checked out because we had started in that point, and I was like, you're pagans in different color smocks, and then my brain started going in that direction, and then I should have said cloaks, not smocks, but whatever, right? That's what they wear.
Interpreters are in smocks.
And then I just started going down that kind of well, and then when the sermon, it felt like a sermon to me, started, I was getting very like, I just need to tune this out, and I felt bad, but I think that's just my
Well, she
own.
said it was a sermon too. She was
Yeah.
like, oh, I just preached a little. That's my thing. Sorry.
I needed to check out. I'm sorry. And that's when I text Megan, and I was like, I regret this. I regret this.
and my response was, I don't regret not taking Carrie.
Yes.
Don't regret that.
Yeah.
That would have overwhelmed me because I am definitely not comfortable with any of that vocabulary.
Right.
Well, Megan, if you ever want to play with us again, and I realize that after tonight, that is a big if, we'll make sure you get to be the non-religious next guest.
Yeah.
I was with a group of friends, and we were talking about the mishaps of interpreting, and mine is always related to religion. And I've been baptized twice, hasn't stuck, doesn't stick. And I was like, they were talking about farrows, and I was like, oh, I love farro, like it's a grain. And they were like, no, like the religion. And I was like, what? Farro.
Oh,
Like just stupid stuff like that
farro.
happens to me all the time, and I'm like, I just, like, my brain goes to what I know. Yeah.
I rejected it so much I can't even remember the example, but I did a musical with a mutual friend of ours, and it was Jesus Christ Superstar, and so there was religious stuff in there, and I was like, how are you even going to make sense of this one sentence? And they're like, well, because Jesus blah 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 blah, and I was like, oh, good thing I'm not doing that.
Surprisingly, that is like one of my top 5 favorite shows, and I have interpreted it, and I have had to be like, okay, great. What does this mean?
So the irony out of all of this is I have never actually seen Jesus Christ Superstar.
I like that, but I'm not very religious.
Now, Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, if I could have a full-time job just interpreting Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, sign me up.
I'm with you. I love that one too.
Never seen
I mean, I
it.
think I just have a crush on Donny Osmond.
Yeah, he's so good at that.
Yeah, he is.
I have to say, there were some other things in the text I was triggered with, if it's okay if we kind of go into that. I wrote prayer yoga felt a little cultural appropriation for me.
I actually didn't like that either. But I don't
Yeah.
know, something inside me went, I don't
What would
know if I like
Jesus eat?
Oh,
Well,
that
that
was
whole thing, slim for him. Yeah, that whole thing was
Is
upsetting.
that what they were saying? I couldn't hear all the programs. Yeah, the ones that I did hear were super triggering to me too, though.
Yeah. And I was reacting. We're not supposed to, but I think I like audibly when I heard Slim for him, like made a gasp or something. I was like,
That's just, I mean, honestly, like I'm just gonna put my bias out there. That's disgusting.
oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It was hard. Um,
Ugh.
and I feel like it's still there. I have a neighborhood friend of mine who is of Islamic faith, and we both talk about like food, and we started talking about intuitive eating just the other day, in fact, because the school keeps trying to force my kids to eat like chicken and turkey, and they're culturally vegetarians like in the world because they can only eat like kosher kind of, and the school doesn't provide kosher meat. And so they were talking about getting a note from the doctor, and that's what they did. And it was all great and helpful. And then we started talking about how food, is wholesome and clean. And it's like, so white supremacy. And she's like, right. We always talk about my culture's food being so fattening. She's like, but Americans are statistically fatter, we started talking about that. And then, they were talking about like what's in their religion. And it's like, part of their religion to clean their plate when they eat. And I just found it so interesting because we have that culturally, and their culture and their religion are so tightly interwoven. And I just thought how fascinating that was. And then, right, like when they were talking today about like being condemned by God by giving up on your fast, but already feeling those kind of mixed emotions, right? And then having it written in your scripture that you must eat your whole plate, clean your plate. I just was really fascinated by that whole concept, and I still am.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
But I was really the most upset about the beginning when she talks about how her mom had lost all this weight and then became pregnant, and she was like, oh no, now you're going to gain all that weight back.
Oh, that was awful. And like she was a small child saying that too.
And it came out so fast. I wish there was a moment to kind of like stop and like reflect on that, because that was really the fact that they were so young, the fact that she was pregnant, like there is so many, like, I feel like,
yeah, there's a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah. And even for me, it's kind of like hanging with me a little bit.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was having like an out of body experience in that moment, because I don't think this is going to be a really bad interpreter confession. I don't think it like fully hit me what she was saying until after I interpreted it. And then I was like, my first reaction was like, oh, and then after that I was like, oh shoot, that was a really important thing that she just said. I hope I just did a good job. Because like, if I had been like, I probably should have waited. I was probably being a little regulated by the speed at that point. But if I had known that's where that was going, I probably would have put more gravity to it and like maybe added a little more prosody and like paused to really emphasize that statement. But it just was happening. And yeah, that's in the moment I was like, oh gosh. And then I was like, oh, ooh. It's rough.
My last issue with the source text, of course, was that deaf was lumped into the disability services and the people with cognitive disorders and the deaf people. It was like, we service people with cognitive, limitations and disabilities. On Sunday, we have Spanish services, and we also have an ASL, service. That's where I would like us to be culturally, not like here, deaf people don't want to be labeled as disabled, and that's this whole other thing, but that always kind of like, yeah. And I feel like at that point I was already being triggered and hit by so many things throughout the text.
I don't know. I left this feeling like I don't know anything. I don't know religion. I didn't understand the whole thing at the beginning about how she made the whatever that was, the little slider thing. And I was like, the what a who? I was thinking like a slider, right? Like
is that what she said? Is okay, so that was actually a problem for me too. Slider, is that what she said? is it like a slide rule? Okay, see, I have no schema for Weight Watchers like pre-cell phones. My mother-in-law sometimes, I know, well, I just outed her on social media, but it's fine. People in my family have used Weight Watchers, and I know it's always an app. So I didn't realize that before the app, I guess people had like a little I couldn't hear what she was saying. I know she was printing something, and I figured there was charts on it or something, but like I couldn't hear what she said. So that was where I was a little, I don't know what we're printing here.
So like you guys talking about how you're triggered by the content, I'm like, I didn't even understand any of it. It's just all over my head. Like what are we upset about? What are we just
Well, now we need to do another one
Yes,
with
please.
a content area that Megan feels like super good about.
the alphabet. I can
But
do
not
that.
right now.
Go through them. You pick it. Unless, I felt like that was actually good prep going through it in the beginning. I've never done that before.
Yeah,
so
never.
We're just like, what's next? Great. Here we go.
And then we start interpreting it. We're like, ah.
Yeah. And I feel like you having Naomi maybe was because like I feel like Naomi is like the kind of person where you're like, you could have said that in easier English, and then you're like, oh wait, no, you couldn't have. You know what I mean? Like, I always want to be like, there's easier words. No, they're not. You're just saying the hard things.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always intimidated to use to beat her, because I feel like the vocabulary it's not that it's a high vocabulary, it's that she's putting out high contextual, academic statements. And I'm like, oh, this is not my kind of English. I mean, like, I understand it, but it's like, I get very intimidated by it. Yeah. I'm leaving here feeling bad. I feel Naomi, I feel like Chelsea did everything.
Mhm.
I got paid in feeling okay about my work today, so I'm okay with it. For once, one of these podcasts I feel okay about.
That's good. It's a good note to leave on.
Yeah, let's never interpret another one ever again. So this can be my final feeling about this project.
So you can step out. Megan and I will keep going until we
Go for it.
find the same feeling.
Go for it.
I have a question, if you don't mind. So off of this, on Marco Polo, Chelsea, you and I have been talking about schemas and prediction. Right? And like maybe they're the same and maybe they're different because so I'm wondering, you might want to summarize what I said a little bit better and then answer the question that I'm implying.
I'll summarize it, but I want you to ask me the question.
How did it serve you here?
My schemas and my prediction skills.
Your schemas and your prediction and your closures and all of that.
That's a great question. Okay, so wait, do you want me to summarize what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we've been talking about how having a schema and making predictions. How I was talking about it was mostly like prior to interpreting, the act of interpreting, not in the process of interpreting, like making those micro predictions, but like predicting this is what we're going to talk about and how that serves you, and how when you make predictions before the act of interpreting, you get visualizations, and then during the process of interpreting, you can kind of pull from those visualizations that you've already built instead of creating them in the moment. Does that make sense? And we were talking about how prediction skills and visualization, how they're intertwined, and maybe sometimes the same thing and maybe sometimes not. And I don't think they are the same thing, but I think they're really closely related. So
I was thinking how like schema can get distorted as content knowledge.
Oh, that's a big question that I don't think I could answer right now.
Yeah, but this is the discussion that we're having off of here in our other, because we are obsessive and we're always thinking about work and how to be better at work.
We're weirdos.
But anyway, so now this is interesting because we've been having this conversation specifically on schemas and content knowledge and how does that serve you in your prediction. And so here we are in a scenario where we do have some content knowledge because this is our 5th time now doing this podcast. And this was your wheelhouse. So you did have a schema for that. So how did that impact going into your L2? Were you able to visualize? Were you feeling like you were able to close out thoughts and ideas?
Yes. The answer to
sorry.
that is yes.
Mhm.
Because I wasn't struggling with comprehension so much. Well, I mean, let's take out the accents from the a factor. I mean, like the content itself. I wasn't struggling so much with comprehension, which is, I think, the thing that is generally in my process the most detrimental thing to visualization is when I can't understand
Mhm.
what someone's talking about. But like when she said, for example, like, which I actually didn't know, that Lent is like based on the temptation of Jesus. I already knew. I saw him in the desert. I knew he was there for 40 days. I knew he fasted for 40 days. I know the devil went and I know the devil tempted him. And I had the whole scene in my brain right there. So I didn't have to create that because it was already created for me. So I didn't have to put mental labor into that. Even just the simple things about like visualizing standing in front of a church and seeing what it looks like from the pulpit or the altar, whatever you want to call it. Like I already had these like little micro videos in my head. And then it really served me when I literally like knew what she was going to say because I was familiar with the piece of scripture she was quoting or whatever. And also like even simple things like the books of the Bible, like when she was like, oh, in Exodus it says this, or in Genesis it says this. Like I feel like maybe someone who's not familiar with the books of the Bible would have been like, wait, what book was that? But like she said Exodus, like I was even 5 minutes later I would have been said, yeah, we're talking about Exodus. Like I just had those sorts of things, so I was didn't have to put so much mental energy into
See?
see into R. C and R. I think, okay, yeah, that's a good point too. If I had had no content knowledge, I think the accents would have tripped me up a lot more. But because I was familiar with a lot of the words she was using, a lot of the concepts she was using, I was able to fill in the gaps that I couldn't understand because of the accent or because of the editing.
Mhm. Yeah, and you alluded to that before also.
Yeah, so C and R for sure. Probably
C
even P too.
and P for
It's just
sure.
better to know before.
Yeah, but especially as we were talking as an L2 going into your L2 language, how that serves you greater when you have a better understanding for the in the L1.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the mechanics of how it serves me, I think it helps me it helped me set up space better. And yeah, for sure it was setting things up in space because I already when I saw it,
Right.
I could see, whatever, like Jesus is here and John the Baptist is here, whatever. I don't even know what they're talking about, but because I was just able to bring it down. So it really
Yeah,
helped with setting up space.
yeah, that's what we've been saying. So cool. And then my last is, if we do like a CRP analysis, I know that our affect was off. And I wonder if it was like the sisterly bond that made it off, or our interpreting that was off, but I'll just blame our interpreting. So
Oh
next.
yeah, I think so. I also think that, I mean, I hate to keep harping on this and I'm so sorry, Carrie and Sadie, but I think that maybe even just trying to navigate the accent
Yeah.
made me like have to listen a little harder, and that diverted my energy from being able to just kind of be natural and free. I was like, oh my gosh, what are they saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's definitely where affect suffers, is when I can't, when I'm trying to put a lot of energy into understanding, like listening.
That's all I have. Anybody else? That's in then.